All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June 2024 program meeting for the Licking County Computer Society. We have a guest speaker this month, goes by the name of Ray Baxter. You may know him as the APCUG president and treasurer, and also the president of the Payson Computer Meetup Club. Where is that located, Ray?
It's at Payson, Arizona.
Arizona.
If you look on a map of the state of Arizona, it's right in the center, about halfway between Phoenix and Flagstaff.
I'll stop by if I ever head that way. All right, so Ray's going to be speaking about the way we listen to music, how it's changed over, the past couple hundred years. I could go into more of the description, but it was in the email, and I don't want to steal Ray's thunder. So, Ray, if you're ready to share, take it away, please, sir.
All right, let's see how this works.
All right, we're seeing it.
All righty. So far, so good.
Looks very good.
And this is going to be, I call this the technology changes for music listening at home and in the car. So first of all, a little background information about me. So from a music-related point of view, I was born and raised in New York City. People often say to me, I have an accent, and I love to tell them I never had an accent until the day I arrived in Arizona. Then all of a sudden I had an accent. Anyway, growing up in New York City as a youngster, I was there at the birth of rock and roll, and I actually started my record buying at the age of 11 when I got my first phonograph.
What was it?
Oh, I don't know, something my folks bought off probably at what was it called? Sears.
Nice.
Sears, when they were still in business back in the day, and nothing fancy, but it played 4 speeds, including 78 and 16. And most people never even heard of 16 RPM, but that was typically for just the voice recordings because the fidelity was terrible, was non-existent. Anyway, I was also the former president of what we call the Doo-Wop Society of Southern California. That organization was around for 14 years, starting in 1989, and we would actually put on the live quarterly stage shows featuring the vocal groups from the 1950s and early 1960s. And if you ever saw some of the shows that were on PBS, they're called Doo-Wop 50 and Doo-Wop 51. Those are the kind of shows I used to help produce. Here in Arizona, I'm a member of and kind of host and do most of the meetings of RCA, stands for Record Collectors of Arizona. That group meets weekly via Zoom and also monthly in person, and where we jointly as a group, and the monthly meetings are as many as 18, 19 people, listen or watch music-related YouTube videos while discussing the early days of rock and roll. I'm the co-founder of a local music listening club that meets monthly, and we do this at different people's homes. So we rotate the members' homes, and here we usually for about 3 hours, we discuss and watch YouTube music-related videos of all types of popular music from the last 70 years. On the technology side, yes, I'm president and treasurer of APCUG, and just to mention, John Kennedy does so much for that organization, and you folks are so lucky and fortunate to have him with your group there. I value John's contributions all the time. I help coordinate the Payson Meetup Computer Club, and now there's no president there. This was a group that was a small club that was going out of business, and I converted it to a meetup club because I use Zoom. So there's no dues, there's no offices. We just have monthly meetings that I typically chair and provide some input. And then I used to teach computer classes at the Payson campus of the Eastern Arizona College before COVID. All right, so the first part is going to be a little a trip down memory lane and how technology has changed the way we listen to music at home. Now, what works for me is if you have questions that come up during the course of the presentation, it would benefit me if you could write them down so you don't forget them, but then hold them till the end. And then at the end, we'll do a lot of questions and answers, and those questions actually then might prompt somebody else to have a similar type question. So before I get started, I'm going to show you a little bit about my man cave here. And now this video I took several years ago, and some of the equipment has changed and whatnot, but it's still pretty much where I hang out a lot. Well, hello there, folks. Since this presentation is titled How Technology Has Changed the Way We Listen to Music over the years, over about the last 70 years, I thought I'd show you that I actually have some of the different devices we used in that time frame. So we can start with the 78 RPM record, and here's my collection that I probably started collecting in 1956 and 57, because I made a spreadsheet so I can know where the different records are. We then moved on to 45 RPM records, and I keep them there. And then, of course, the long play album over here is what most of us, probably many of you may still have. And then we moved into CDs, and the amount of CDs that we have here, this is my collection, and then my wife has her own collection over here. And then now we're into MP3s. I have many of them on my computer, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then some of the equipment we used over the years would include, of course, the turntable. This is a unique turntable, in fact, that I can put a disc on here, and I may demonstrate that. Press a number, and then it'll automatically go and count the number of spaces between the tracks. And then if I press number 4, it would drop down automatically on the 4th track without me having to search for it. Before we started making copies of CDs on the computer, we actually had devices like this, where you could put the original in here and a blank over here, close them up, and then this would automatically make, let's give that a little help, would automatically make a copy of the disc. The old VHS player, this is one that'll actually convert it to a DVD. And then I talked a little bit about the computer. All right, let's start with before 1948. And that 48 is a pivotal year, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But way back in 1877, it was Thomas Edison who led to the development of what became the 78 RPM record. And during the first half of the 20th century, this now for the first time allowed consumers to choose what music they wanted to listen to at home. And that 78 RPM record was actually a format that needed improvement almost immediately. First of all, they were made out of shellac. That's why they could easily chip or shatter. And then due to the weight of the tone arms on the early players, the recording grooves and thus the sound quality would deteriorate after many plays. Now, there were some consumers, believe it or not, who would add to this problem by taping a coin to the tone of the arm to help reduce skipping. That sound familiar to anyone? I don't want to forget about the radio. Record players were expensive, and there were many people who just could not afford them. But before 1948, most households had a radio, and after the initial cost, the music was free. And what was great about radio, it made available all types of music for all kinds of listeners. So before the 1960s, in a segregated America, phonograph records broadcast over the radio were available for everyone to hear. It only depended where on the tuning dial the listener chose to stop. In a small way, radio helped equalize the social classes. Both the poor and the rich could hear the great vocalist. White listeners could hear black music without fear of violating any of the current day social norms. And in the mid-1950s, particularly in large urban cities, there were many a white young teenager with a transistor radio tucked under the pillow in the wee hours, listening to the transition of black R&B into early rock and roll. Just ask me. So records become vinyl, and a format wars begin. So developed and introduced by the Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS, in 1948, this was to improve upon the decades-old 78 RPM format. Now, at the time, Columbia's arch rival was RCA Victor, who was then the largest record label for distributing 78 RPM records. So the benefits of the LP over the 78 are probably obvious. They had greater sound fidelity, weighed less, far less breakable, and you could play it at that slower speed of 33 1/3 revolutions per minute. A 12-inch disc could have as much as 22 minutes of music per side. Now, those first LP records, most people don't realize, were only 10 inches in diameter, the same as the 78 RPM record. So to my guess, Columbia thought it best to keep the same size disc that the general public was already used to. But within a few years, the LP size was increased to 12 inches to obviously accommodate more tracks on each side, and it's remained that way to this day. Although over the years, various other size discs were tried, but none ever caught on. Well, the little disc with the big hole in the middle. So that's the 45 RPM record. So it was the following year, RCA Victor needed to compete from a sound quality perspective with the LP, and so they introduced this new format. And RCA Victor had a big advantage here in that they made the record players so they could sell them at cost to entice new buyers to go out and buy the 45 RPM. Now, the 45 had its own benefits. With about 3 minutes of playing time on each side, perfect length for the pop, as well as what we used to call hillbilly songs of the day. And this size disc was also ideal to replace 78s in the nation's jukeboxes, which were very popular at the time. Now, how many of you still have your 45s? Over the years, I'm always amazed that I know a lot of people have kept LPs for decades, but most have gotten rid of their 45s. And today, the 45 RPM, depending what genre, is like stamps and coins. They can be very valuable. I sold 145 several years ago for $500. They are collectible. Hey, how many can relate to this? When I was a kid, this is how we made a playlist. Now, let me give you a little personal story here, and maybe you've heard the term over the years, nature or nurture. So I was adopted, and I searched and found my birth family in the 1990s. I learned then that my birth father, Sam, he played the accordion and harmonica and was an avid record collector of Irish songs and pop hits of the day. On my birth mother's side, her son, Joe, is such a Beatles fan that he named his first son, Sean, following the lead of John Lennon. Now, my adopted parents provided me with a wonderful life, and while they had little interest in music, as I said before, on my 11th birthday, I received my first phonograph. Now, in 1957, I purchased the record, That'll Be the Day, by Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Little did I know that Sam, my birth father, had purchased the same record at the same time. I've yet to meet anyone close to my age where the parent and child were buying the same music in the 1950s. So on the left is Sam's 78 RPM. His daughter gave that to me. And on the right is my 45 RPM, which I still have in the original sleeve from 1957. Okay, we move on now to 8-track. And what I like to call here unintended results, because the 8-track was invented by Bill Lear in 1965. You know, the Lear jets, and he bought them. He manufactured them for his planes, but then realized they were ideal for consumers to play music in their cars. Now, the players were initially manufactured by a Ford Motor Company affiliate, thus making the name Motor Victrola into Motorola Corporation. Now, the compact cassette had really humble beginnings. Going back to 1963, when they were developed, they were initially only used for dictation recording. due to their poor sound quality. But by the early 70s, with the introduction of the Dolby B tape noise reduction system, it was felt now they had the ability to record hi-fi, and that made the compact cassette a serious format for recording music. And it had staying power. Home recording decks allowed consumers the ability to create their own mixtapes. Remember doing that? And continuing improvements in tape quality and other features kept the cassette a popular format even into the 21st century. That's brought on the Sony Walkman. 1979 ushered in a new era of, this was considered portability, and it sold over 200 million units. Its compact size in the day made them conducive for music to jog by and other outdoor activities. And Sony's lead helped the cassette tape outsell vinyl records for the first time in 1983. So everybody thought, well, vinyl is on its way out. The popularity of the Walkman was at its highest during the period 1987 to 1997. But then with the introduction of the compact disc, the cassette format began to fade. But the Walkman name stayed relevant for many years as an MP3 player, a phone, and even a portable DVD player. Music portability before the iPod was the Sony Walkman. Now, what do you do with your old mixtape cassettes? So if you have cassettes that you made in the 70s and 80s on tape hanging around the house, just get rid of them. You know, there's so many other ways that I'll talk about that you can listen to that great music much better today than a cassette. However, if you have one-of-a-kind tapes, maybe they're the voices of loved ones who've since passed on, or maybe you were on in my case, I was on a couple of radio shows, and those were recorded, and I would like to keep those for posterity. So here's how you digitize cassette tapes. The upper photo shows what appears to be a standard cassette player with the typical controls of play, fast forward, stop. But the bottom of that same cassette, I've turned it over, and the bottom left shows the player has a connection for a USB flash drive that will record in real time an MP3 file when the cassette tape is being played. And the bottom right shows a similar unit, but it's larger, more like a boombox style, and that can accommodate not only a USB flash drive, but also an SD card. So these are the way you can convert cassettes to digital. Then we had the compact disc. Starting really in the 1970s, there was a joint effort between Sony and Philips in the research and then the development of what today is still called optical disc technology. And as I recall, the first commercial CDs were expensive and consisted mostly of classical music. But by 1982, the first pop album on CD came out. It was Billy Joel's 52nd Street. Then by 1985, Dire Straits became the first artist to sell 1 million CDs. Philips and Sony's continued to work together, and they created the CDR, the recordable CD, in 1990. But by 2008, sales for the large label CDs began to drop as much as 20% due to the rising popularity at the time of music downloads. And while still a popular format, CD sales have continued to decline each year since, with the exception of 2021, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now, question I ask it every time I do this presentation, and I'm always amazed at how few people have done this, but do you copy your CDs to your computer? Times have changed, and that's called ripping. So times have changed, and today the main reason for ripping a CD to your computer is for backup purposes. In the old days, you'd want to make a copy of that CD. Maybe that's the one you had in the car, so if it got damaged or the sun melted it, you wouldn't worry because you had the original at home. But today, if you rip your CDs and you have them, this allows your collection to be organized on your computer so a song can be found quickly by title, artist, or album name. But in addition, and more importantly today, this music that you already own can now be downloaded to your smartphone and played without the expense of paying for a streaming service. And most newer autos allow you to play the music on your smartphone through the car sound system via Bluetooth, while older vehicles allow you to do that using a wired audio connection. And I'll go into those in quite a bit of detail later on. And then another option is to copy those MP3 music files to a flash drive to play in your car. Of course, most newer cars have a USB connector that is voice operated, allowing the user to choose the music to play by artist name, song, or even album title. Now, here's an interesting tidbit of information. How does a computer know what songs are on a CD? Let's think about this for a minute. Music CDs were first introduced to the public long before the PC became standard in the home. So for all these older CDs in circulation, the data for the song title and the artist are not stored on the actual disc. So here's what happens. When you insert a CD in a computer, the metadata is automatically retrieved. You have to be online, of course. The metadata is automatically retrieved within seconds from an online database. And how it figures out what is the right CD, it compares the number of tracks on the CD and the individual times of each track. So the chances of two different CDs having the same number of tracks and each track being the same length of time are remote, although I have seen where it can happen. So there's several of these online music databases. Gracenote is the most popular. Now, more recent music CDs have the artist and track information encoded in the CD. So this data can be read by CD players used in cars in the home, but computers cannot read it. Guess how long it took to rip these? Yes, it was ongoing, but I was so glad I did. Now, the iPod leads the way to the popularity of portable music players. First released by Apple in October of 2001, Apple's iTunes and other similar software provided the ability to transfer songs, photos, videos, and other data to this and other portable devices. And then the advent of compressing music files allowed consumers to create large music libraries without using up enormous amounts of precious storage capacity. However, Apple discontinued making the iPod. It lasted quite a while, but they stopped it in May of 2022. Now, I'm going to be talking about MP3 audio. And what is an MP3? Well, it's the audio compression subset of the Moving Pictures Expert Group family of standards. In other words, this was started by the motion picture industry. And it's a process where they compress to roughly 10% the size of the original audio recording file without noticeable loss of sound quality. As an example, if you had a song on a CD that took up 50 megabytes of storage, once you converted that to an MP3 file, that might only be 5 megabytes of storage. Now, many audio files disregard the MP3 because it does compress the music, and they instead opt for what is called lossless recordings, which has the full fidelity that you would find in a commercial CD. But the impact of the MP3, portable MP3 players now can hold thousands of songs. They were very popular until the advent of this feature in smartphones. And then most modern car stereos today have a USB connector, allowing flash drives containing thousands of songs to be played while driving. I'll talk just briefly about digital downloads. They lasted for a while and then kind of disappeared, but they were the first thing to replace CDs. And according to Nielsen and Billboard, digital music purchases in 2011 accounted for more than 50% of music sales. And in several years, digital sales increased and physical CDs continued to decline. This gave the opportunity for stores like iTunes, Amazon Music, and others to flourish because they replaced the music purchases that most of us probably used to from the brick and mortar locations. So the digital downloads were more economical because you only paid for the songs you wanted. You had the opportunity to listen maybe to a 30-second clip of a song before deciding if you wanted to make the purchase. And this gave new artists a way to showcase their work without the need for a full album. Today we're into music streaming services. And what are the best music streaming services? Well, check out this CNET article, Best Music Streaming Services for 2024. They've been updating this every year for about the last 5 or 6 years, I believe. And they'll give you an in-depth review of all these music streaming services and more. But briefly, I can tell you that Amazon Prime Music, I think, is best if you're an Amazon Prime member, because this is a benefit that comes with the membership. And they have 2 different programs. One is just called Prime Music, and that'll give you about 2 million song catalog. But they also offer a fee-based Amazon Music Unlimited, which they say has over a 100 million song catalog. Apple Music is best for those committed to the Apple ecosystem. iTunes has been retired and replaced by the new Apple Music, along with some sister apps for TV and podcasts. And then YouTube Music has replaced Google Music, or rather Google Play Music. That's been retired. And YouTube Music is geared to those who also enjoy watching the videos. Spotify, a big name, they're headquartered in Sweden and the largest music streaming service in the world. They have the normal individual plans, and they also offer a family plan. For one fee, you can get up to 6 users. Pandora is a free service like the others. You input a favorite artist, you'll hear songs by them. And then Tidal offers a high-end audio version, and they say they have a 100 million song catalog as well as videos, and they have a focus on hip hop and R&B. Now, what are the pros and cons of a music streaming service? Well, I think advantages would include listeners now that you can hear who else recorded a favorite song, or you can listen to other songs by a favorite artist. And then you get to hear new artists that otherwise you might never have the opportunity for. Again, as we're saying, access to millions of recorded music songs. And there are disadvantages, I think. And the free services have limitations on the music you can hear. You will always need an internet connection, typically. And while some services do allow the download of the playlist for offline listening, but these songs cannot be copied to the device. And if you're not using your Wi-Fi, then your monthly data allotment is being used. And the premium services have a cost. Now, millennials love music streaming. The younger music lovers have moved away from purchasing and collecting music media, CDs and digital downloads. They prefer renting their music from these online services. And now they can have a form of personalized internet radio. They can create their own playlist, and they can sort their music by genre, tempo, artist, any number of ways, and have so much more available to listen to. And the major benefits include no need to worry about storage issues, damaging a disc, theft, etc. Wow, think of how much room I'd have up in my loft. So, question comes up to me more often: how do singers, composers, and others get paid from streaming? So these streaming services receive income from 2 main sources. If you have a free account, then it's the advertisers pay the streaming service to interrupt the music you are listening to with ads. If you're willing to pay for a subscription account, then you as the user pay the streaming service a monthly fee so you, the user, can choose the music you want to hear without interruption. Now, what the music service pays the artist and others entitled to royalties is really complicated, and it's based on a variety of factors, such as the payments being more from paid subscribers versus the free service. So just a basic example would be a streaming service paying an artist 0.0032 cents per stream. And that comes out to basically 1 cent for every 3 plays. Now you might say, well, how can anybody make any money that way? All right, so I'm going to give you a little question here. Now, for the years 2020 to 2022, think to yourself, which artist had the highest number of streams for each of those years? I'm going to give you a hint up front. It was not Taylor Swift, not Adele, nor the Canadian singers The Weeknd, and I did spell that name correctly, or Drake. It was Bad Bunny. See, most of you say, I never heard of Bad Bunny. Well, Bad Bunny is a 29-year-old Puerto Rican rapper and the first non-English language act to be Spotify's most streamed artist of the year. In 2022, he had 18.5 billion, that's billion with a B, streams. Now, 2023, Taylor Swift was the winner, and she set a record at the time with over 29 billion streams. So the point is, whereas in the past, music was dominated by the English-speaking countries with physical sales of media to their residents, today streaming allows anyone in the world with a cell phone to participate and show support for their favorite artist. Now, to stream or not to stream, that is the question. You should consider streaming if you don't have a large collection of music, but would still like to have access to favorite artists, or you enjoy discovering new artists and their music. Hey, maybe you're considering downsizing and no longer want to store and maintain a collection of vinyl or CDs. And you listen to music every day and want to have it readily available using today's technology. On the other hand, I don't think you need to stream if you don't have an interest in today's new artists or the various pop music offerings. And listening to music is not an important aspect of your daily life. And let's say you've been collecting music for decades and already own all the music you ever want to hear. That being the case, I'm going to repeat myself and say you should take the time to rip the music to your computer and then to portable storage devices that you can play anywhere. Okay, YouTube music video. It's one of my most popular uses. I'm actually I subscribe to YouTube Music Premium. Now, in the early days of rock and roll, national TV programs like American Bandstand, then the many weekly variety shows, I'm sure we all watched Ed Sullivan at one point or another, where how viewers watched their favorite music icons. And then theatrical movies, some of them were made to showcase the rock and roll stars of the day. A lot of these different clips have been saved over the decades and have been uploaded to YouTube. So while YouTube offers a subscription service, most watch the free related videos with ads. Current day concert footage is either from professionals or sometimes just individual attendees in the audience with their smartphone cameras, and they get, as soon as they get home, they upload this to the site. Now, I gotta give you a word of caution. Be careful, as the YouTube site can be habit forming. More than once, I've told my wife, Carol, I'll be coming to bed in a little while, and the next thing I see, the sun shining. Okay, music apps to download to your smartphone. Do you ever hear a song playing but can't recall the name or artist? Well, with either SoundHound or Shazam, and I believe Shazam is now owned by Apple, these are apps, free apps on your smartphone, and when it hears the song playing, these apps will tell you the song title, the artist name, they'll provide lyrics. If there's a video available, they'll start to show the video, and they'll tell you what the top songs are from this artist and more. So two good apps to have on your smartphone. Or if you want a music player for your Android smartphone, now that Google Play Music is retired, I use Musical.ly as my player of choice for the songs saved on my Android smartphone. And the features I like best include the ability to search. I can just by voice, I can ask for a particular song. It's free, and there's no ads, and there's no need for internet access because my songs are stored on my device because I've done the process of ripping them. And then many features, including tag editor, equalizer, headphone control, etc. So Musical.ly is what I like. Now, you can have your cake and eat it too. Today's modern phonographs connect to standard RCA inputs, that's the red and white, without the need for the higher amplification phono connection that was used on older receivers. So you can purchase a turntable with a USB cable, and it'll allow you to connect it to your computer and records the songs in real time as MP3 files as they play on the phonograph, turntable, I should say. Now, are LPs taking us back to the future? According to Rolling Stone magazine, the sale of vinyl records in 2020 generated more annual income than compact discs for the first time since 1986. I'll repeat that. Vinyl records generated more income in 2020 than compact discs. CD sales had been declining 3 times as fast as vinyl sales. And in 2021, CD sales increased by a small 1.1% from 2020. So that was the one exception. And experts attributed this to Adele's top-selling CD titled 30. Most of the older people who like Adele would still prefer to buy the CD rather than use streaming service. But a reality check reminds us that streaming remains the most popular way to consume music, accounting for over 80% of industry revenues in the US. So are LPs taking us back to the future? Something old, something new. And you can see the newer albums aren't just black in color, the actual discs, they come in a variety of colors and designs. Now here's an interesting and revealing statistic. According to recent data, only half of the consumers who have purchased vinyl records in the past 12 months actually own a turntable or record player. In other words, a significant portion of buyers lack the equipment to play the records they've purchased. So you might say, well, why the heck did they do that? The reason is they want something tangible, something they can hold in their hand to show support for their favorite artist, while at the same time using more modern methods to listen to the actual music. Now, as Little Anthony once said, Little Anthony and the Imperials, he once had a song called "There's Just Two Kinds of People in the World." And I say that's true. Today, there are music listeners and there are music collectors. Obviously, longtime record collectors have and continue to use a turntable. I have 2 in my home, and I have a spare in storage. So the resurgence of vinyl records and the nostalgia associated with turntables has led to increased sales, which I expect to continue, but not forever. So have we gone back to the future? Think about it. In 1964, you might have rushed out and bought the first Beatles album. And then in 1967, you replaced it with an 8-track tape. And then in 1972, you replaced that with a cassette tape. And then in 1985, a compact disc. You made it an MP3 file in 2005. And lo and behold, in 2018, you went and bought a 12-inch vinyl LP again. Now, you're going to hear there's different terms about the music file formats. You can get the high quality ones, and they give you a large file size. And then there's average quality, and that's a smaller file size. I'm not going to go into these, but just briefly, the different file formats. MP3, very popular, but it's compressed, but it's convenient for storing music on smartphones. ACC is the Apple alternative to MP3s. The WAV file is the one that all CDs are encoded in. And then FLAC is what the audio files like, and they call that, as I mentioned before, lossless compression, and it gives them a high resolution, high rates, much higher quality, and does not take up as much room as a WAV file on a CD. And then Apple has its own equivalent to FLAC called ALAC, and then there's something called DSD, which was for super audio CDs, which I don't think they make anymore. So another term you're going to hear a lot about lately is high resolution audio. So what is high res audio, and should you care? Well, streaming services like Tidal and more recently Amazon Music HD are touting their ability to stream music to smartphones and most digital hi-fi components as high resolution audio. Simply put, high-res audio or music files that have a higher sampling frequency and or bit depth than a compact disc. That's very high to begin with. So the positive is you're getting a higher quality sound reproduction. The negative is if you want to hear it properly, it requires high-end speakers to receive the full benefit of a very large file size. Bottom line, what kind of music do you listen to? Soft vocals don't really need high resolution audio, but classical or rock might. And what kind of speakers do you listen with? Do you have inexpensive earbuds, or do you have high quality headphones or tower speakers? So here's the music listening blindfold test I suggest. Pick a favorite song and have a friend play it on the same equipment, alternatively from either the original CD and then from an MP3 computer file. If you can correctly tell the difference, then high-res audio may be a worthwhile investment for you. But if you're like me and are unable to notice a stark difference, you've just saved a bunch of money. All right, now I'm going to move on to part 2. I'm going to take a swig of water here so I don't lose my voice. And there'll be some videos here, so you won't have to be listening to me or my voice too much. This is now listening to music in your car. Listening to music in your car. How far we've come from the AM radio. Yes, music in the car has evolved. Started with an AM radio. AM stands for amplitude modulation. Then they added push buttons. Wow. And then we had FM radio, frequency modulation, 8-track players, cassette player, CD player, then multiple disc players, satellite reception, wired connection, flash drive connection, and the latest feature, Bluetooth connectivity. So today the options for music in the car are numerous, and they really can be confusing. So I said your choices include AM radio, and it's sometimes you can get what's called AM stereo. Now, AM radio has been in the news a bit lately because Congress was considering, well, actually, some of the manufacturers were considering eliminating the AM band from the new cars when they provide, because they're offering so many other things. But I think Congress stepped in and said, well, number one, because a lot of consumers who listen to talk radio, most of that is on AM, and they didn't want to see that disappear. And then Congress also said the national emergency, when there's an emergency, the broadcast is on the AM radio. So I think Congress passed some regulation that will insist that AM radio still be available. You have FM radio, and some of that includes HD FM, which can offer up to 3 additional channels on the same frequency, Sirius XM satellite, and then USB connectivity, and some later model cars now offer connectivity for 2 drives, and one of them can be the USB-C, which is really going to at some point replace the USB-A that we've become used to. And then Bluetooth connectivity to play the streaming music, and then the CD players have all but disappeared from new cars. Hey, it's like deja vu all over again. Who remembers who said that? Yes, the above quote is, of course, from famed New York Yankee catcher Yogi Berra. And why do I say that? Well, most of you can recall when the following disappeared from cars. The 8-track player I talked about briefly, and the cassette players. This is just evolution. So now, in addition to the CD player disappearing, my 2019 model vehicle doesn't even have the simple audio cord input connection anymore. So why don't the new cars have the CD players? Simple. Time for new technology to take over. As car CD players, think about it. They've been around for more than 30 years. It requires the user to have physical presence of the media. You need the disc, of course, and typically you want to have the jewel case to house it when it's not in use. So that's not necessary with newer technology. And as I've said many times already this morning, this afternoon where you are, music CD sales have been declining since 2004. Young listeners are opting for newer methods to hear their favorite artists and tunes. And auto manufacturers are now providing newer technology so they can eliminate the expense of a CD player, which today has limited appeal with younger consumers. So you now have to decide how you want to proceed. I think you have a few options here. First one, I've talked about this before, is convert or rip the songs from your existing CD collection to MP3 files, and then copy those to the devices that you then can play in your car, either to your phone or to a flash drive. Or option two, you don't want to go through all that hassle. You're just going to choose and pay for a streaming service that'll play the music in your car from your smartphone via Bluetooth or wired connection. Or there's option three. You can be like me and use both. So option one, over the many years, this is a process I would perform. I've said this before. As soon as I purchased a new CD for the obvious backup benefits. Now there's a new app within Windows 11 called Media Player. I often said they should have come up with a better name because for probably 20 years almost, they had Windows Media Player. Anyway, the new Media Player is a modern app, comes with Windows 11, can be downloaded to Windows 10, and it was recently updated, and now it includes the ability to rip CDs. So this definitely would be my choice to use. And that one, now the old Windows Media Player, and now has the word legacy added to the title. It's still available on Windows 11, but has not been updated in a dozen years and is no longer fully functional. So unless you're really married to it, I would not be using it. And there are some other ripping choices. Windows users can still, and I have a friend who has a Windows computer, but he loves using iTunes. And now iTunes was retired, but the MS Store will still give you the ability to download iTunes on a Windows computer. And of course, the Apple users can use the more modern Apple Music app. Another recommendation is the free MusicBee program, which I use on my music computer to organize my song collection. It's called getmusicbee.com. And another good choice is VLC. That is many ripping tutorials for videos that are available on YouTube to watch to see exactly how to use it. Okay, so how do we rip CDs to the computer? Well, we need an optical drive. And guess what? Newer laptops no longer have optical drives for the most part because they wanted to get the ability to make their laptops thinner. So you can get an optical drive external unit that plugs into a USB connection. The units are for CDs and DVDs, and they're reasonably priced under $30. But if you want it for a Blu-ray disc, these are more expensive. Those normally run $65 or more. So there are many YouTube videos that provide the visual instruction and narration to help you understand the process of ripping a music compact disc to your computer. And I'm not going to spend today's valuable time doing that. They're out there, and if you haven't done it before, it's not a hard process. And these videos on YouTube will show you exactly what to do. All you have to do is type in the YouTube search box, rip CD to computer, and they'll all pop up. So I'm going to, at this point, assume that the songs from the CD have been ripped to your computer, and then you've copied them from the computer to a flash drive that you now want to play in your car that has the built-in USB connector. So now I'm going to start with a video and show you how I've done that. Okay, we're back in the car, and now we're going to take the flash drive that I brought with me and put it into the USB connector slot. I have two in this car. Doesn't really matter which one I use. I put it in one of them, and then I close the console. Now my audio is off, so I'm going to turn my audio on. And I'm going to go to the home key and then audio, and it's already started playing. So I got the volume control here. Now it's not picked out the correct album art, which makes sense. And for some reason, John Carpino's name is coming out ARPIN. I don't know. That's not important now. The purpose is to show you how this works. So as I said, I can use the controls here on the screen to either advance to the next song or go backwards. Now it's showing a total of 37 songs because I've actually downloaded on this flash drive the 3 CDs that I own. I'm going to now also show you how we can make these changes on the steering wheel. Here is, I can go to the next track just by using the controls on the steering wheel. I'll go back, and the same thing works for volume. And one of the nicest features is when you can actually choose a song based on the verbally asking for it. Play track, I Can't Get Arrested in This Town. And all by itself, just like that, up comes that song and starts to play. So think about as you're driving and you don't want to have to be touching the screen or anything. You can just speak what you want and the system will respond. And then if you're driving with a passenger who wants to see what other songs might be available, the passenger can tap the browse button, and then here list all the songs we have in alphabetical order. And so when you get to one you like, the passenger can do, okay, let me hear this song. So lots of nice features by using a flash drive in the car. All right, so we now know how to use a flash drive for those cars equipped with a USB connector. And this really isn't something new. I had this feature on a 2008 vehicle I once owned. Now, the ability to verbally request songs and/or artists is the best feature, as this allows hands-free usage, thus improving safe driving. Now, new phones no longer accept micro SD cards. Now, iPhones never allowed the use of micro SD cards for additional storage. And the same is now true for newer Android devices. An important feature, why? Well, an important feature for modern smartphones is being water and dust proof. So eliminating openings in the design of newer phones is the best way to achieve this. So with this change, not being able to put a micro SD card to give you additional storage, most new phones now come with an increase in storage, at least 128 gigabytes, and with capacities going all the way up to 1 terabyte. So now consumers have choices on what they expect their future storage needs to be, then they can choose the appropriate amount of storage built into the phone. Now we have to get the sound to the car's speakers. So Bluetooth systems allow you to pair your smartphone with the car stereo head unit to play the music wirelessly. Simple. It's really a simple process, but if you get to an issue where you're not quite sure, there are many YouTube videos that show the pairing procedure and how it differs among the different car manufacturers. And if that doesn't work, then certainly your car dealer is another option that can help in this regard. And then there's the older fashioned audio jack cable. It's starting to disappear, but older devices have an audio jack that is typically used with wired headphones, but can also be used with older cars that have this type connection. And that way the music will be coming out of your car speakers. And last but not least, this is an old type of device, but if you have an older vehicle, and I'll show you an example of that, it's called an FM transmitter. And it allows music to play from your device to an unused FM station on the car's radio. So I'm going to show you every possible way to get the music from your device to your car's speakers. So let's go and take a look at Bluetooth from your phone to your car speakers. Okay, we're back in the car, and this time it's going to be a demonstration of how the Bluetooth works when your phone is paired with the head unit in the car. And I've already done that with this phone,
And this particular system is called Sync 3, actually allows for the pairing of several phones. So you could have your spouse's phone, you could have your kid's phone, and depending who wants to play the music on a particular drive, we can easily change to whose phone is going to be paired. So now in this case, I have brought up on my Musical.ly app the song by John Carpino called Get This Thing Right, and it's from the Evolution LP, and I'm going to use the button on the screen here to play it. Let me turn up the volume a little bit. So it's coming out, and that's nice, sounding good. But now, imagine I'm driving. I don't want to actually take my hands off the steering wheel. So I can just go to the controls on the steering wheel, and I can change the volume this way, either up or down. And likewise, if I want to go to the next track, it's just click on the Seek button, and there's the next track. So again, safe driving. My hands really aren't coming off the steering wheel, and yet I'm controlling what I want to hear out of the car's speakers via Bluetooth from my phone.
So that was option one. Now we're going to go to option two, choosing a music streaming service. And as I said before, most streaming services give you two choices. Choice one, use the free service, but you'll get ads. And most of the time, the service decides what songs to play in the genre you prefer. And then there's choice two, you pay for a service. Typically, it used to be $10 a month, but now I've seen some of these prices have been increased, where you choose the songs and the artist you want to hear. Now, the streaming service leaders include Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, and Amazon Prime. And as I said before, for those already paying for Amazon Prime, this is an included benefit. So it's an excellent way to experience and experiment with a streaming service at no extra cost. And Amazon, as I said, has the other service called Amazon Music Unlimited that you have to pay for, but that has many, many more song choices. So now we're going to see music in the car using your streaming service.
All right, we're going to now use a streaming service. So I have Amazon Prime on my phone. Amazon Prime is free. Temporarily, I've also started a trial version of Amazon Music Unlimited, and that gives you many, many more song choices. So I'm going to tap on my Amazon Music on the phone. Comes up and it looks for the search history. I have John Carpino's name in already, so I'm going to keep it there and tap on that. And on the phone now it's coming up with several results, and it has John Carpino as the artist. So I'll tap him, his name, and then it's showing the different albums that he has. Some of these I own, but some of them I don't. So if I go to this one here as an example and tap on it, it's going to show me all the different songs he's done. And I'm going to play the first one. I just tap on it. And now, even though it's playing on my phone through Bluetooth, it's coming out through the car speakers. And just like we did before, I can control the volume on the steering wheel. And I can also go to the next track on the phone, the next track on the phone, or come back. So again, all the things that you'd like to do and hear the music from your phone when it's connected via Bluetooth and you have a streaming service, you can hear all the different songs coming out of the head unit in your car. Okay, now we're in a car that does not have Bluetooth, but we still want to be able to utilize our cell phone as an example with the music we have on it to play in the car. So in this case, I use a wired connection. So normally most phones have a speaker jack. Instead of using the plug for headphones, I'm using it to connect it to the auxiliary input jack in this particular car. And I have a little holder here, and I'll talk about that in a second, that puts the phone right within easy reach of my hand as I'm driving. So I have it all connected. I have my music Olay system set up. I want to hear a particular song, Hey Memphis by John Carpino. I just press the play button. And now again, it's coming out of the car speakers. Control it with the volume control here like I normally would. But I have all my music with me on my phone connected to the car, even without Bluetooth. Now what I've done is also I use this little bit of a holder here, and I'll just take this off for a second. This just clips right into, just hangs right on the CD insert spot. So that way, but it won't move, and I like it because it's within easy reach. Some cars have more vents, and you can use clips like that too, but for this particular vehicle, I think this worked out the best. Put this back, lock it in a little bit.
Okay, we're coming to the end, but I want to cover a couple of more points here for, let's say you have an older car, an older truck maybe, so it doesn't have any of the modern audio features. Well, if it has a cassette player, they still sell what are known as cassette adapters, where you plug in the cassette and the connector and goes to the, which I'll show you in a second how that works. And then there's a Bluetooth FM transmitters that plug into the DC power, and that can give you hands-free phone calls and music playing through your car speakers. So you can either use Bluetooth or attach an audio cable between the speaker jack of the FM transmitter and the device that'll be playing your music, as an example, your cell phone. And some FM transmitters actually accept USB or SD cards, so you can put them right into the FM transmitter. Anyway, an FM transmitter means you configure so it can send the audio sound to a not in use FM radio station, and then listen to your music on that station in your car.
Okay, folks, now we're going to move on to a vehicle that is so old. This is my 20-year-old motorhome that the fancy entertainment system consists of an AM/FM radio and a cassette player. Then what do? Well, you can get what's called a cassette adapter. Now, the cassette adapter costs under $10 at Walmart, and this one is a wired cassette adapter, and I just recently learned that on Amazon you can buy a Bluetooth cassette adapter that will come without the wire, and it'll connect via Bluetooth your phone and the cassette, so whenever you're playing it, and I'm going to give you an example of how that works now. So I'm going to take the cassette adapter and put it into just like I normally would. Yeah, the wire is sticking out, but that's no big deal. And the other end of the wire is connected to the speaker jack on my smartphone, where I have the song ready to play. And I'm going to press the play button, turn up the volume a little bit. And this is my friend John Carpino, who's given me permission to play all of his music for these instructional videos. And it's close enough to me while I'm driving. If I want to hear to the next song, I could just tap on the button that goes forward to the next selection, and there it is. So, and again, but the volume is all controlled on what I normally would if I was playing a tape. So that's one way of dealing with an older vehicle if it has a cassette player, and all your music though is stored on some kind of device like a smartphone. All right, the next item and type of device I'm going to talk about is called an FM transmitter. Now, these have been around for a long time. I had one probably close to 30 years ago. They were analog in those days, and they really didn't hold the station very good. What does an FM transmitter do? It takes the signal that you're sending to it to an unused FM radio station. So we know on the FM dial, there's lots of stations that are not broadcast on, depending where you are. You can then direct the signal to go to that station and hear it through your FM radio. So this particular device I liked. It has the ability for me to play a flash drive with music on it. So all I have to do is plug it in, and when it's connected to the DC power, it'll play, and it also, this is a neat one because it has a SD card. So I can actually put all of my music on a SD card like this and have it plugged in, and it'll play. The problem with this one is when I have it plugged in over here, it's in my gear shifter is in the way. So for this particular vehicle, this isn't working that well. All right, so what did I do? I went out and I got a second FM transmitter, one a little bit more flat that fits in nicely to the DC power slot on the dash here. You can see I already have it tuned to 93.1. That's the FM station, and on my radio here, I also have it at 93.1. So now when I play a song on my phone that's connected via Bluetooth, it'll come out through the speakers in the vehicle. So let's see if that works.
I've been watching out my window. Everybody looks confused.
John sounding very good. So this now is really close to me as I'm driving. If I want to go to the next song, just a matter of tapping the forward button like that, and it brings up the next song. And I can see on the phone, it's called It's About a Love. And this particular app I'm using actually gives me the lyrics. So, but I should be watching the road, not the lyrics as I'm driving. So that's how an FM transmitter works. You pair your phone with the transmitter, and whatever unused station in your area is not being used for a regular FM signal, you're able to play your device through that. All right, here we go with the final aspect. I've taken my FM transmitter, and this time I've saved all of the songs I have by John Carpino on a flash drive. And I've plugged the flash drive into the center button here. The other two actually are for if you want to charge something. Let's say you want to charge your phones or something else, you can plug in here. But the middle one will now actually read the information that's on that flash drive. And what's on that flash drive is the MP3 files of John Carpino's songs. So I have it set up again. I just have to press the play button here. And it's now, you can see there's no phone here. It's now playing the songs that are on this flash drive through the FM radio on the 93.1 station.
Well, maybe I expect more from my brothers and sisters. Take a look around you, man. Take a look around you, mister. 2 men walking around with a hole in their heart.
So even with an old vehicle, a 20-year-old vehicle that only has a cassette player, you can see there's several ways that you can take today's technology, as long as you have your music saved as MP3 files on some kind of device, and play them in your car effortlessly as you're driving along, and you can be on the road again. Thank you very much.
Okay, some other options. Android Auto. That's a mobile app that allows features from an Android phone to appear on a car's compatible entertainment head unit and be voice operated. Now, this works primarily on car models 2017 and later. Not to be outdone, there's Apple CarPlay software, and that runs from a connected iPhone to provide a variety of audio features, very similar to Android Auto. That works on car models from about 2016 and later. So here's an example. Here's the infotainment screen, and it changes. So when I just have the normal Ford Sync 3.4 screen, that shows up, and I have my different dials, not dials, but buttons to press to give me other options. But once I've plugged in my phone into the USB connector in the car, Android Auto now shows up on the screen. And there I have, and that's just one screen, there's multiple screens showing all the apps that are on my smartphone. So one example is the navigation system that came with the car gets updated occasionally, but what happens when there's a traffic accident today and I'm trying to get through a particular road? That's where Waze comes in. WAZE is an app on the phone that is real time, and it's people who are involved in the slowdown connecting and telling others who are in that area what the problem is. So in a case like that, I would switch from my normal information, plug in my phone, and start using Waze in the traffic. So lots of advantages in using either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Now, to utilize the benefits of Android Auto requires having your phone physically plugged into the car's USB connector. Now, plugging and unplugging your phone each time you enter and leave your car can be annoying. So wireless adapters are available, but they can be pretty expensive. And you should use the USB-C cable that came with the phone or one that is made for Android Auto, because some USB-C aftermarket cables are only for charging and will not work. Now, if your vehicle does not have a factory installed navigation app, then Android Auto is a very smart way to have your route appear on the larger infotainment screen. Then we have Apple CarPlay, similar in function to Android Auto. Of course, except the big exception is made to work with iPhones and all the Apple apps, including Maps, music, text messages, and talking on the phone without having to hold the device in your hand. Apple continues to add more benefits to CarPlay. An example that came out that says if you have a 2021 car model or newer, it's a feature called Car Keys. And believe it or not, this would allow you to leave your keys at home, since you'll be able to unlock and start your car with your iPhone using NFC, near field communication tap technology. Now, the latest is called Android Automotive, and this is factory installed. So relatively new, and in contrast to Android Auto, Android Automotive is a full operating system installed at the factory, running the vehicle's infotainment system and not relying on a smartphone to be present for its operation. Messaging, phone navigation, music playback, as well as vehicle-specific functions such as controlling air conditioning are part of the operating system. And a similar situation with Apple CarPlay, where the operating system can be ordered as a new car option. So if you're getting ready to buy a new car, be sure to see if the model you are interested in has such availability of either Android Automotive or the Apple CarPlay operating systems built in. Music formats will continue to change. One certainty with technology, it's always evolving. Either you evolve with it or get left behind. I always like to do the best of both worlds when I can. So my wife likes Ed Sheeran, and one of his songs is called Shivers. I think, I'm not sure if it's his latest album, but it was called Equal. I have it on my Plex server. I have a Plex server in my office, and that allows me to put all my media on one computer and play it anywhere in the house. So there's an example on our 55-inch TV in the living room. I can play the song Shivers, and at the same time, I could put the disc on my turntable and play that same song. So it's a little bit of both, best of both worlds, something old, something new. Now, one last comment. YouTube has very strict policy regarding songs played in videos on their website. You must have permission to do so. If you violate that, it's a strike, 3 strikes, you're out, and YouTube will shut down your channel. Now, I know many user groups, and I know that yours is doing this, upload the presentations to their club's YouTube channel. So I wanted to make sure this could be accomplished without a copyright issue. So my playing John Carpino songs with his permission allows this tutorial to be uploaded without a copyright strike. So you would be doing me a personal favor to just go to his website, johncarpino.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click on Send Message to tell him you saw my presentation and appreciate that he has allowed his music to be used.
Liked what you heard? Then support this marvelous singer-songwriter by bringing home his music. Available on his website, johncarpino.com.
All right, that ends the presentation. I'm open for questions. I'm going to stop sharing now. And we're back.
Questions in the room or on the chat?
Well, I have a comment. I'm the video guy. I have a Edison phonograph exactly like what you showed in that picture up front when you showed that.
Yeah.
And I have about a half a dozen or a dozen or so actual records that came with it.
Nice.
I found it in one of the first houses I lived in, and also I have a very similar to your man's cave. I've got not quite as extensive as yours. I have about everything except 8-track. Everything else I do have. About 145s and about 80 or so LPs, tapes, CDs, you name it.
Good. What is your favorite music genre?
Well, I don't have a favorite. I either like the tune or I don't. Simple as that.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Very good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's interesting. Now that does it play 78 RPMs? That turntable you referred to?
Yeah, right. It used the original, what do you call that? Vinyl shellac. I have the original records.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Ray, I've got the question you were going to mention. Why in 2021 did the CD purchases really kick up?
Adele. Adele came out with an album called 30, and she's changed this. But in her early days, every time she came out with an album, it was a number, and that number represented how old she was when she recorded the songs. So 30 that's how old she was, and she's since changed that. But there was several songs that became big hits, and older folks like us, not wanting to really jump into the streaming, but wanted to physically hold something in their hands, went out and bought the CD, and that's what drove CD sales up that particular year.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a comment also. My family is big into Spotify. My children would probably murder me if I ever canceled the Spotify. We have a family plan with my wife and kids on it. I listen to Spotify for hours every day. It's also really good for podcasts and even news. I listen to NPR on there every day. And then, speaking of the vinyl, my kids are teenagers and they're buying vinyl albums, some new presses and some original presses of the music that I taught them to appreciate as they were growing up. So it's just amazing seeing them get into vinyl records. That's something my generation kind of skipped. I went from cassettes to CDs to digital, but my kids are really big into vinyl, so I think that's really
I mean, most younger people like it because they can hold it in their hand, and unlike a cassette, which was almost impossible to read the liner notes, and even CDs, if they were extensive liner notes, an LP is nice. It's big, inserts in it, so that to me separates listeners from collectors. As I said before, now there's two kinds of people in the world: music listeners or music collectors.
Yeah, I consider
your kids have the collector gene.
I consider myself a huge music fan. I listen to music all the time, basically, and I don't own any music now. I haven't owned music for probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, probably 10 years.
What's your favorite genre?
I like everything, but favorite would probably be classic rock.
Okay, I always challenge people when they say they like everything, because I'll mention rap, I'll mention classical music. I mean, there's just genres that you would never listen to. So
yeah, I listen to all of them. I don't listen to much classical, but I definitely listen to some rap. My favorite artist probably over the past year or so to listen to has probably been Bob Dylan.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Dylan fan. I have his first 14 LPs.
Nice.
The first rock and roll concert I saw was Bob Dylan in 19 '83 at Carnegie Hall because I
Wow.
was still living in New York then. I hadn't moved yet, and he wasn't popular. His first album had just come out, just titled Bob Dylan, and it was only 2 songs on that album were his writings. The others were either Woody Guthrie or other people, and so it didn't sell well. And Bob Hammond, who was his producer at Columbia Records, said, "Oh my God, we signed this guy, and he's terrible." And then his second album came out, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, and that was a huge. That had Blowing in the Wind and several of his classical hits. That became very, very popular, and then his career goes on. So, so I saw him in '83. I saw him in 1986 at a concert in Flushing Meadow Park, where the World's Fair had been held 2 years earlier. And he came out at his standard, his acoustical guitar, harmonica, terrific. Intermission, longer intermission, opens up. There he is with an electric guitar and a full band behind him. And he breaks into the song Highway 61. And within 10 minutes, people are booing. Within 30 minutes, half the audience left.
Wow.
They weren't ready for this change. They didn't want it. Bob Dylan could have cared less. He was there. And that's why he's lasted all these years, because he goes with the times.
You said 83. Did you mean 63?
Yes, I'm sorry if I said 83. That was wrong. 63 is when I saw him, because I said I hadn't moved yet from New York.
Yeah. Both my
I was 19 years old.
Yeah, both my teenage children own Bob Dylan records now too, which is pretty cool.
And I love it. I love it.
Me too.
Anybody that's online that would like to say something, don't forget, you just need to unmute and then you can give your comments or ask your questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ray Baxter. This is Mary Frances. I'm an old timer. I mean, old timer. My husband is horrified at how little I know about all the things that you brought to us this afternoon. You have inspired me to get off my lazy and learn the items that you have brought forth to our attention. And what music do I like? Well, if Billy Joel sings it, I'm there.
Yeah, Mary Frances, you do need to say how this has been very appropriate since the CD player in your old van went out. Now you can't play CDs.
Correct.
But now Ray has shown you how you can.
Yeah,
So-
that's a way to get into the modern age. Your old stuff breaks.
I'll give you my Billy Joel story. I got a story for everybody. So I had a high school friend named Larry, and Larry, when he left, his first job was with the New York City Police Department, and he became an officer there, and he was doing a lot of moonlighting. And so Billy Joel came to town one time and talked to somebody and said, I want to get somebody added to my security group that is authorized to carry a firearm. And so Larry got the job, and he became really good friends with Billy Joel over the years. They both live on Long Island, not too far from each other. And then Larry, his last 5 years with the NYPD was in the Harbor Patrol. So,
Wow.
oh, well, guess what? When Larry retired from the police force, not only was he still dealing with and working with Billy Joel had him driving his yacht out of Long Island Sound, because he was
Kidding. You're
And so-
kidding.
yeah, with Christy and the baby, and my friend Larry tells me all kinds of great stories. So in my collection, I have a personally signed autograph by Billy Joel to me, as well as he signed my favorite album that I have on it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. This has been great.
Well, Mary, my pleasure. I'm glad I could share. As you can tell, I'm a little bit enthused about this topic. So the opportunity to talk about it is a pleasure for me.
Yeah, personally, this has probably been my favorite presentation. No offense to anyone else, but yeah, this is great. Including myself, because I do a lot of myself.
And you know, for another time, you'd probably have lots of stories about those doo-wop shows that you had out in California that were the actual performers that were coming in years later and redoing their stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we did this for 14 years, and here were my boyhood idols, and now who almost all have passed away by now. But in those days, I got to meet them in person. We'd have usually the shows might be on a Saturday night, so they'd come in on a Friday. We'd have rehearsals and just very, very nonchalant. The show on Saturday, Sunday morning, we'd meet at a restaurant for breakfast before they would head on the plane to fly back home. So there was a group called the Harptones, and I don't expect most people to know them. That's the kind of music I love, which is doo-wop or vocal group music. Harptones are a classic New York group, and they came out for one of our shows, and they were staying at the Marriott Hotel just outside of LAX, and so we had breakfast there that morning, and we're walking out. We're going to take them up the block to the airport, and as we're walking through this big lobby, there's a piano in the corner, and Raul Sita, who is he sang with the group, but he was really their leader, and he did all the music. He walks over to the piano, and starts, easy to play, and he starts playing it, and the rest of the group got around him, and there they begin just singing in the Marriott lobby at 11:30 in the morning. And all of a sudden, we had about 40 people who just stopped doing what they're doing and came over to listen. That was a better concert in some respects than the night before.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, so that was a fun part, and I got to, as I said, meet a lot of boyhood idols, and and learn about the music, and to the point where it's minutia. Some people call it trivia, but it's in minutia. Now, I mentioned 45 RPM records. They are, as I said, very collectible, and I'm not a real collector anymore. But the real collectors, they will keep their information about the name of the song, the name of the artist, the name of the label, the number of the item on the label, and the year it came out. Unless they try to what they call run a label. So there were tiny little labels. They've all gotten bought up by the big 7 names in music today, but they'll run a label, and meaning they want to get every 45 that was ever released on that particular label. So there's a lot of them are dying off today, unfortunately, but there are a lot of serious collectors. And to me, it's just like stamp collecting or coins. It's supply and demand. Song might be terrible, but there's very few copies.
Very, very neat. All right. Does anyone else here have any questions or comments in person? Otherwise, I finally, again, Ray, want to thank you for being here. Very great wealth of knowledge. Very good presentation. We very much appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording and get into our door prize drawings.
Attendance reward.
Potential attendance rewards.
All righty.
Attendant initiatives.
Yeah, that's the one.
Now, is it okay for me to leave now, or would you like me to stay long?
No, you're great.
Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you. Thank you again, John. Thank you, Adam. See you next time.
Thank you. Take care.